The smell of whiskey and regret had become William York's only companions in the 2 months since Margaret walked out of their ranch house with nothing but a carpetbag and the banker's son from Carson City. He sat on the porch of his weathered homestead outside Tonopah, Nevada, watching the sun bleed across the desert horizon in shades of orange and crimson that reminded him too much of the wedding dress she had worn 5 years ago. The year was 1887, and the silver mines that had drawn them here were still producing, but the vein of hope in his chest had run dry the moment he found her goodbye note tucked beneath the sugar bowl. William had built this ranch with his own 2 hands, cleared the sagebrush, dug the well, raised the barn beam by beam. He was 32 years old, tall and lean from hard work, with sun-darkened skin and calloused palms that had once held his wife close on cold desert nights. Now those hands shook slightly as he raised the bottle to his lips, trying to drown the memory of her laughter. The way she used to braid her auburn hair in the mornings while humming hymns she had learned as a girl in St. Louis. The ranch hands had learned to avoid him during these twilight hours. They finished their work and rode into town for cards and company, leaving their boss to his solitary vigil. William knew they whispered about him, about how Margaret had chosen Edmund Caldwell's money over her husband's devotion, about how William had aged a decade in 8 weeks. He did not care. The shame of being abandoned burned hotter than any Nevada summer, and the only thing that numbed it was the rotgut he bought by the case from the general store. 3 days after the autumn equinox, his foreman brought news that shifted something in the foundation of William's grief. A woman had been found wandering the road between Tonopah and Goldfield, half dead from thirst and exposure, her fine clothes torn and dusty. She had been brought to Doc Harrison's place and was recovering slowly, speaking to no one about where she had come from or why she had been alone in the unforgiving desert. William listened with detached interest until his foreman mentioned that the woman wore a wedding ring but refused to give her married name. Something about that detail caught in his mind like a burr. That night, instead of drinking himself into oblivion, William found himself thinking about a stranger who also wore the weight of a failed marriage. He did not know why it mattered. Perhaps misery truly did seek company, or perhaps he was simply curious about someone whose pain might mirror his own. The next morning, he rode into Tonopah with the excuse of picking up supplies. The town was a collection of wooden buildings and canvas tents that had grown around the Silver Strike, populated by miners, merchants, and opportunists of every variety. Doc Harrison's office sat above the apothecary, and William climbed the narrow stairs with his hat in his hands, unsure what he was doing or why. The doctor was a grizzled man in his 60s who had seen everything the frontier could offer. He looked up from his desk with raised eyebrows when William entered. "Didn't expect to see you in town, York. Thought you were keeping to your ranch these days. Heard you had a patient, the woman they found on the Goldfield Road." Doc Harrison's expression grew cautious. "I do." "What business is it of yours?" William hesitated, feeling foolish. "No business, I suppose. Just wondered if she needed anything, if there was anything I could do to help." The doctor studied him for a long moment, then seemed to reach some internal decision. "She's in the back room. Been here 4 days now. Strong enough to walk, but she has nowhere to go and no money to pay for a room at the boarding house. I have been trying to figure out what to do with her." He paused. "Her name is Diana Hughes. That is all she will say about herself." William nodded slowly. "Can I see her? I suppose it cannot hurt. But go easy. Whatever happened to her out there, it left more than physical scars." The back room was small and sparsely furnished with an iron bedstead, a washstand, and a single wooden chair. The woman who sat in that chair, staring out the window at the dusty street below, turned when William entered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Diana Hughes was perhaps 27 or 28, with dark blonde hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and eyes the color of storm clouds. Her face was thin, marked by sun and hardship, but there was a delicate beauty to her features that even exhaustion could not erase. She wore a borrowed calico dress that hung loosely on her frame, and her hands were folded in her lap with the stillness of someone who had learned to make themselves small. "Who are you?" Her voice was soft but steady, with an accent that suggested education and Eastern roots. "William York. I have a ranch outside town. Doc Harrison said you might need some help." Why would you help a stranger? It was a fair question, and William found he did not have a good answer. "Maybe because I know what it is like to feel lost." Something flickered in her eyes, recognition perhaps, or simply acknowledgement of a shared wound. "The doctor says I can stay here another 2 days. After that, I need to find work or move on." She said it without emotion, as though reciting facts about the weather. "What happened to you out there?" Diana turned back to the window. "I was left behind. That is all that matters." William pulled the wooden chair closer and sat down, keeping a respectful distance. "Your husband, a man I trusted. He brought me west with promises of a new life in San Francisco. We got as far as Goldfield, and he decided I was not worth the continued expense." Her voice remained flat, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her hands tighter. "He took the last of my money and the stagecoach north. I tried to follow on foot, foolishly thinking I could make it to the next town before nightfall. I was wrong." "I am sorry. Are you?" She looked at him sharply. "Or are you like the others who have come to stare at the foolish woman who trusted the wrong man?" William met her gaze steadily. "My wife left me 2 months ago for a banker's son. Took nothing but her clothes and her jewelry, did not even have the decency to tell me to my face. So no, I am not here to judge you. I am here because I thought maybe you could use a friend who understands." The anger in Diana's expression softened into something more fragile. "I am sorry for your loss, likewise." William stood, suddenly aware he had intruded enough. "I come into town every week for supplies. If you need anything, or if you are still looking for work when the doctor sends you out, my ranch could use someone to help with the cooking and household management. The pay is fair, and there is a small cabin that needs occupying." "Why would you offer that?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance, even people like us who have been left behind." He left before she could respond, feeling her eyes on his back as he descended the stairs. As he loaded supplies onto his wagon, William wondered if he had made a mistake. The last thing he needed was another woman in his life, another opportunity for disappointment and pain. But something about Diana Hughes had reached past his defenses, had reminded him that suffering was universal, and that isolation only made it worse. 4 days later, she appeared at his ranch on foot, carrying a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. William was mending a fence when he saw her walking up the dusty road, her borrowed dress already showing the signs of the 3-mile journey from town. He set down his tools and went to meet her. "I accept your offer if it still stands," Diana said without preamble. "I can cook, clean, mend clothes, and keep accounts. I worked in my father's dry goods store before I married, so I know inventory and numbers. The offer stands. Let me show you the cabin." The structure sat 50 yards from the main house, a small building with a stone fireplace, a sleeping loft, and windows that faced the morning sun. It had been built for a ranch manager who had moved on 2 years prior, and William had kept it maintained out of habit. Diana walked through it slowly, running her fingers over the rough hewn table, testing the ladder to the loft. "It is perfect," she said quietly. "Thank you. You start tomorrow. Breakfast at sunrise, then whatever needs doing around the main house. Supper is at 7. Sundays are your own." Diana nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "I will not disappoint you, Mr. York. Just William. We do not stand on formality out here. Then you should call me Diana." The first weeks were awkward, filled with careful politeness and maintained distance. Diana proved to be an excellent cook, far better than the ranch hands had managed, and the main house slowly began to show signs of proper care. Curtains were washed, floors were swept, the accumulation of bachelor neglect was systematically eliminated. William found himself coming in for meals that were more than beans and hardtack, sitting across from Diana at the kitchen table while they ate in companionable silence. Slowly, in small increments, they began to talk. Diana mentioned she was from Philadelphia, the daughter of a shopkeeper who had died when she was 23. She had married Thomas Hughes 6 months later, desperate for security and believing his promises of prosperity. William spoke of building the ranch, of the early struggles and small victories, of Margaret's increasing discontent with frontier life, and her longing for the society she had known in St. Louis. "Did you love her?" Diana asked one evening in late October as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the vast Nevada sky. William considered the question honestly. "I thought I did. Maybe I loved who I wanted her to be, not who she actually was. She never wanted this life. I just refused to see it. Thomas used to tell me I was too practical, that I lacked imagination." Diana's voice was thoughtful. "Maybe that was his way of saying I saw through his schemes and he resented it. You are better off without him, as you are better off without Margaret." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the coyotes sing in the distance. William realized he was content in a way he had not been since before his marriage fell apart. It was not happiness, not yet, but it was the absence of acute pain, and that felt like progress. As autumn deepened and the desert nights grew cold, William found himself looking forward to the evenings when Diana would finish her work and join him on the porch. They talked about books they had read, places they had seen, dreams they had abandoned. She had wanted to open her own shop once, selling fine fabrics and notions. He had imagined building a ranching empire, passing it down to sons who would carry the York name into the next century. "You still want those things?" Diana asked. "I do not know any more. Maybe some dreams are meant to die so new ones can take root." "That is surprisingly poetic for a rancher." William smiled, and realized it was the first genuine smile he had managed in months. "I contain multitudes." Diana laughed, and the sound was like water in the desert, unexpected and precious. Winter came to Nevada with cold winds and occasional snow that dusted the mountains but rarely stuck in the valleys. The ranch work slowed, and William found more time to spend around the main house, ostensibly fixing things that needed attention, but really just seeking Diana's company. He watched her kneading bread dough with practiced efficiency, her sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that had grown stronger with ranch work. He noticed the way she hummed while she worked, old folk songs that reminded him of his own mother. One evening in December, a rare snowstorm blew through and left the ranch buried in 6 inches of powder. Diana stood at the window of the main house, watching the flakes fall with an expression of wonder. "I have not seen snow like this since Philadelphia." "We can build a snowman if you like," William offered, feeling slightly ridiculous as soon as the words left his mouth. But Diana turned to him with a smile that transformed her whole face. "I would like that very much." They bundled up in coats and scarves and went out into the yard like children, rolling snow into balls and stacking them into a lopsided figure. Diana fashioned a face from pebbles and a carrot from the root cellar, while William found an old hat to crown their creation. They stood back to admire their work, breath puffing white in the frigid air. "He looks distinguished," Diana declared. "He looks drunk," William countered. She laughed and bent to scoop up a handful of snow, which she promptly threw at his chest. William stood stunned for a moment, then grinned and returned fire. They chased each other around the yard, throwing snowballs with terrible aim and laughing until they could barely breathe. Finally, Diana slipped on a patch of ice and William caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist to keep her from falling. They froze like that, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how warm she felt against him despite the cold. Diana's cheeks were flushed from exertion and cold, her eyes bright with laughter that slowly faded into something more complex. William released her carefully, stepping back. "We should go inside. You will catch your death out here." "Yes," Diana agreed softly. "We should." But something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing in the quiet spaces of shared meals and evening conversations. William lay awake that night in his bedroom, listening to the wind howl around the eaves and thinking about the way Diana had felt in his arms, the way her eyes had searched his face, as though looking for answers to questions she was afraid to ask. Christmas came, and William gave Diana a shawl he had purchased on a trip to Carson City, fine wool in a deep blue that matched her eyes. She had made him a new shirt, the stitching so precise it looked like factory work. They exchanged these gifts shyly, like young people courting for the first time, and shared a meal of roast chicken and dried apple pie. "This is the best Christmas I have had in years," Diana admitted over coffee. "Thank you for giving me a place to land when I had nowhere else to go." "You have given me more than you know," William replied. "Before you came, I was drowning. You reminded me there was still a reason to keep my head above water. We saved each other, perhaps. Perhaps we did." The new year of 1888 arrived with clear skies and the promise of renewal. William began planning the spring planting, discussing with Diana which vegetables they should grow in the kitchen garden and how many head of cattle he should purchase from the stockyard in Reno. She had a good head for numbers and a practical approach to problem-solving that he valued. More than that, he valued her presence, the way she had become woven into the fabric of his daily life. In February, Margaret's sister arrived in Tonopah with a message. Margaret wanted a divorce so she could marry Edmund Caldwell, and she was willing to relinquish all claims to the ranch in exchange for William's cooperation. He read the letter his former sister-in-law delivered, feeling nothing but a distant relief. "Tell her I agree to her terms," he said. "I will sign whatever papers her lawyer sends." The woman studied him with obvious curiosity. "You seem different, William, lighter somehow." "I am letting go of things that no longer serve me. It is liberating." After she left, William found Diana in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for stew. He told her about the message, about the impending divorce. She listened without interrupting, her knife moving steadily across the cutting board. "How do you feel?" she asked finally. "Free," William said honestly. "I have been carrying the weight of that failed marriage like a millstone. Knowing it will officially end feels like setting down a burden I have been hauling uphill for too long." Diana set down her knife and turned to face him. "I need to tell you something. Thomas wrote to me. The letter arrived at the general store last week." William's stomach clenched. What did he want? To apologize, supposedly. He claimed he made a mistake leaving me, that he has been searching for me. He wants me to come to San Francisco and give him another chance. "What did you tell him?" I did not respond. I burned the letter. Diana's voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce. "I will not go back to a man who abandoned me in the desert to die. I will not go back to being someone's convenient option when he has exhausted his other choices." William crossed the kitchen and took her hands in his, feeling the calluses that matched his own, evidence of shared work and purpose. "I am glad you stayed. So am I." She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw the reflection of his own tentative hope. "William, these past months have meant everything to me. You have been kind when you could have been indifferent, generous when you could have been cruel. You have shown me that not all men are liars, that trust can be rebuilt even after it has been shattered. You have shown me that my heart did not die with my marriage," William replied. "That there is still capacity for joy and connection, even after betrayal. Diana, I do not want you to just be my housekeeper anymore. What do you want me to be?" He lifted one hand to cup her cheek, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she leaned into his touch instead, he felt something locked inside his chest finally open. "I want you to be someone I can build a future with. Someone who chooses this life and me with full knowledge and free will. I want to court you properly, to give you time to heal and to be certain of your own heart. But Diana, I am falling in love with you, and I needed you to know." Tears welled in her eyes, but she was smiling. "I am falling in love with you too. I have been fighting it because I was afraid, because I thought I could not trust my own judgment after Thomas. But you are nothing like him. You are honest and decent, and you see me as I truly am, not as some ornament or convenience. So yes, William York, you may court me, and I will court you right back." He kissed her then, softly and carefully, as though she were something precious that might break. Diana kissed him back with equal tenderness, her arms wrapping around his neck to pull him closer. When they finally parted, both were breathless and smiling. "The stew is going to burn," Diana murmured. "Let it burn." They courted through the spring of 1888 with all the sweetness and awkwardness of young lovers, despite both being well into adulthood and carrying the scars of previous heartbreaks. William brought Diana wildflowers from the desert, bunches of Indian paintbrush and evening primrose that she arranged in mason jars around her cabin. She packed him special lunches when he had to ride out to check the herd, including cookies and little notes that made him grin like a fool. On Sundays, they would ride out together to explore the surrounding country, William showing Diana the hidden springs and ancient rock formations that dotted the landscape. She proved to be a capable rider, sitting her horse with growing confidence as they traversed the sagebrush valleys and rocky hills. They would picnic in the shade of Joshua trees, talking for hours about everything and nothing, building the foundation of true intimacy through shared thoughts and dreams. William's ranch hands watched the developing romance with approval. They liked Diana, respected her competence and the way she treated them with dignity. More than that, they were glad to see their boss happy again, to hear him laugh and see him smile. The whole ranch seemed to come alive under the influence of new love. The buildings freshly painted, the gardens flourishing, the livestock healthy and multiplying. In May, William's divorce was finalized. The papers arrived from Carson City, official and irrevocable, ending a marriage that had been dead long before the legal system acknowledged it. He showed them to Diana that evening, and she held his hand as he tossed them into the fireplace. "That chapter is closed," he said, watching the papers curl and blacken in the flames. "Are you ready to start a new one?" Diana asked. "With you, I am ready for the whole rest of the book." 2 weeks later, on a clear June morning that smelled of sage and promise, William took Diana on a ride to the highest point on his property, a rocky outcrop that offered views of the entire valley. They dismounted and stood looking out over the land, his arm around her waist, her head resting on his shoulder. "Diana Hughes, I love you," William said, his voice carrying on the desert breeze. "I love your strength and your kindness, your intelligence and your laughter. I love the way you have made my house into a home, and the way you have helped me rebuild my heart piece by careful piece. I want to spend the rest of my life proving myself worthy of your trust and your love. Will you marry me?" Diana turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks, her smile radiant. "Yes, William. Yes, I will marry you. I love you with everything I am, everything I have been, and everything I hope to become. You have shown me what real partnership looks like, what it means to be truly cherished. I cannot imagine my future without you in it." He produced a simple gold band set with a small sapphire, which he slipped onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and Diana held up her hand to watch it catch the sunlight. Then she pulled William into a kiss that spoke of passion and promise, of two broken hearts that had found a way to beat together as one. They were married in August in the small church in Tanapa, with half the town in attendance and the other half celebrating at the saloon. Diana wore a dress of ivory lace that the seamstress had worked on for weeks, and William wore a new suit that made him look both distinguished and slightly uncomfortable. Doc Harrison gave the bride away, and William's foreman stood up as best man. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, William kissed Diana with such joy that the congregation erupted in applause and cheers. The wedding celebration lasted well into the night, with dancing and food and toasts that grew increasingly sentimental as the whiskey flowed. But William and Diana slipped away before midnight, riding back to the ranch under a sky full of stars. They stood together in the yard, looking at the main house that was now truly theirs, a shared home built on mutual respect and hard-won love. "Are you happy?" William asked, pulling Diana close. "Happier than I ever dreamed I could be," she replied. "You have given me a life I could not have imagined 6 months ago. A home, a purpose, and a love that feels like coming home after a long journey. You gave me the same thing. You took a broken man and showed him how to be whole again." They went inside together, closing the door on the past and opening themselves to the future. That night they consummated their marriage with tenderness and passion, two people who had learned through pain to cherish the gift of second chances. The months that followed were filled with the rhythms of ranch life and the deepening bonds of marriage. Diana threw herself into improving their property, planting fruit trees and expanding the vegetable garden, raising chickens and learning to make cheese from the cow's milk. William built her a proper workshop where she could pursue her old dream of working with fabrics, and soon she was making shirts and dresses that she sold in town, earning money that she proudly added to their savings. They worked side by side through the scorching summer heat and the crisp autumn days, learning each other's habits and preferences, navigating the small conflicts that arise in any marriage with patience and humor. William discovered that Diana was stubborn about certain things, like the proper way to organize a pantry, but flexible about others. Diana learned that William needed time alone after a difficult day, but that he would always seek her out eventually to talk through whatever was troubling him. In November, Diana realized she was pregnant. She told William over breakfast, watching his face cycle through shock, wonder, and pure joy in the space of seconds. He lifted her up and spun her around the kitchen, laughing with delight before setting her down and apologizing for being too rough. "I am not made of glass," Diana protested, but she was laughing too, her hands resting on the slight swell of her belly. "I am going to be a mother. We are going to be parents. Our child," William said with awe. "A fresh start, a new beginning, something we built together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter months, Diana blooming with health and energy, despite the occasional nausea. William became hilariously overprotective, trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work and fretting over her constantly, until Diana finally sat him down and explained that pregnancy was not an illness. But his concern came from love, and she could not truly be angry at him for caring too much. In late June of 1889, after a labor that lasted through one long night and into the next morning, Diana gave birth to a healthy baby boy. William held his son for the first time with shaking hands, tears running unashamedly down his weathered cheeks as he studied the tiny, perfect face, the miniature fingers that wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. "What should we name him?" he asked Diana, who looked exhausted but radiant in the bed. "I was thinking Benjamin," she said softly. "Benjamin York. It means son of the right hand, a fortunate son." "Benjamin," William repeated, testing the name. "It is perfect. He is perfect. You are perfect." "We are perfect together," Diana corrected gently. "That is what matters." Parenthood transformed them both in ways they had not anticipated. William discovered reserves of patience and tenderness he had not known he possessed, staying up through long nights to walk a colicky baby while Diana rested. Diana found herself fiercely protective of this small life they had created, marveling at how something so good could come from the ashes of their previous pain. As Benjamin grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. William expanded his herd and purchased additional grazing land. While Diana's sewing business became so successful, she had to hire a local woman to help with the orders. They worked hard, but they also made time for joy, for family dinners and Sunday picnics, for teaching Benjamin his letters and watching him take his first steps. In the spring of 1891, Diana gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Catherine after William's mother. 2 years later came another son, whom they named Joshua. The ranch house rang with the sounds of children's laughter and the chaos of family life. William built additions to accommodate their growing family, while Diana organized their household with the same efficiency she brought to everything else. On their 5th wedding anniversary, William and Diana sat on the porch in the twilight, watching their children play in the yard. Benjamin was chasing his sister while baby Joshua napped in Diana's arms. The desert stretched out before them in shades of purple and gold, beautiful and harsh and theirs. "You ever think about how we found each other?" Diana asked, her voice soft with reflection. "All the time," William admitted. "I think about how I almost did not go into town that day, how I almost let my pride and pain keep me isolated. If I had made different choices, we might have missed each other entirely." "I think we were meant to find each other," Diana said. "Two broken people who needed to learn that broken does not mean beyond repair. We rebuilt our hearts together, slowly and carefully, and made something stronger than what we had before." William reached over and took her free hand, lacing their fingers together. "I am grateful every day for the courage you showed in accepting my offer, for trusting me when you had every reason to trust no one. You took a chance on a heartbroken rancher and gave him a reason to live again." "You gave me the same gift," Diana replied. "You showed me that I was worthy of real love, that my judgment was not permanently broken, that I could build a life worth living even after I thought everything was lost. We saved each other, William. That is the truth of our story." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together through hard work, patience, and abiding love. Benjamin ran up to the porch, demanding that his father come play, and William rose with a smile to join his son. Diana watched them with contentment, Joshua warm and heavy in her arms, Catherine trailing after her father and brother. This was not the life either of them had imagined when they were young and naive. making promises to people who would ultimately betray them. But it was better because it was real, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine partnership rather than romantic illusions. They had both been abandoned by people who were supposed to love them, both left to navigate the wilderness of heartbreak alone. But they had found each other in that wilderness, two wounded souls who had the courage to try again. As the years passed, the York Ranch became known throughout Nevada as a model of prosperity and family values. William and Diana raised their children with love and discipline, teaching them the value of hard work and the importance of integrity. They expanded their property and their business interests, but never at the expense of their family bonds. Sunday dinners remained sacred, and they made sure to take time for each other, even amidst the demands of ranch life and parenthood. Benjamin grew into a serious young man who loved the land as much as his father did. Catherine inherited her mother's head for business and her father's stubborn determination. Joshua was the charmer, quick with a smile and a joke, keeping the whole family laughing. William and Diana watched their children grow with pride and occasional terror, knowing that they would eventually face their own challenges and heartbreaks. In the summer of 1899, William and Diana celebrated their 11th wedding anniversary with a trip to San Francisco, their first real vacation since Benjamin had been born. They left the children in the capable hands of William's foreman and his wife, and took the train west to the city by the bay. For one glorious week, they were not parents or ranchers but simply a couple in love, exploring the city, eating fine meals, and remembering what had brought them together in the first place. On their last night, they stood on the beach watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, William's arms wrapped around Diana from behind. She leaned back against him, perfectly content. "You regret anything?" William asked. "The life we have built is good, but it is not easy. The work is hard, the desert is harsh, and there have been sacrifices." Diana turned in his arms to face him, her hands framing his weathered face. "I regret nothing. Every hardship we have endured together has only made us stronger. Every challenge we have overcome has proven that we chose wisely when we chose each other. I love you, William York, more today than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is the gift of a love built on real foundations rather than fantasy." William kissed her with all the passion and tenderness of their first kiss and every kiss since, tasting salt air and sweet promise. "I love you, Diana. You are my heart, my home, my reason for everything good in my life. Whatever comes, we will face it together." They returned to Nevada and their children, sliding back into the rhythms of ranch life with renewed energy and appreciation. The new century arrived with celebration and optimism, and the York family welcomed it with hope. William and Diana stood together on their porch on New Year's Eve of 1900, watching fireworks explode over Tonopah in the distance, their children bundled up against the cold and pressed against them. "A new century," Diana marveled. "Who knows what it will bring?" "Whatever it brings, we will handle it," William said confidently. "We have survived worse than anything the future can throw at us." And they had. They had survived betrayal and abandonment, had walked through the valley of heartbreak and emerged on the other side stronger and wiser. They had built a marriage based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and the deep knowledge that comes from truly seeing another person and choosing to love them anyway. They had created a family, a legacy, a life worth living. The children grew and eventually began families of their own. Benjamin married a teacher from Carson City and took over the day-to-day management of the ranch. Catherine married a lawyer and moved to Reno, where she opened a successful dress shop. Joshua became a veterinarian, practicing in Tanapa and the surrounding towns. William and Diana became grandparents, then great-grandparents, watching their legacy multiply and flourish. They grew old together, gray-haired and weathered but still holding hands, still finishing each other's sentences, still finding joy in each other's company. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1928, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, they renewed their vows in the same church where they had first married. Diana wore blue to match her eyes, and William wore his best suit, and when they kissed, their family erupted in cheers and applause. That night, alone in the house that had witnessed the entire arc of their life together, William and Diana sat on their porch one last time, watching the stars in the Nevada sky. They were both 73 years old, slowed by age but not diminished by it. Their hands were clasped together as they always had been, two lives so thoroughly intertwined that neither could imagine existence without the other. "We did well, did not we?" William asked softly. "We did better than well," Diana replied. "We took broken pieces and built something beautiful. We took pain and transformed it into purpose. We loved each other slowly and carefully until that love became the foundation of everything else. I would not change a single moment," William said, "even the pain that brought us together, because it taught us to value what we found. Every scar was worth it to have this life with you." "Every scar," Diana agreed. "Every tear, every moment of doubt or fear, all of it led us here to this porch, to this moment, to this love that has sustained us for 4 decades. We rebuilt our hearts together, William, and the result was more beautiful than anything we could have built alone." They sat in peaceful silence as the night deepened around them, two souls who had found each other in the wilderness and built an oasis together. They had been abandoned by their first loves, left to die in the desert of heartbreak and betrayal. But they had survived, had crawled toward each other across that burning sand, had helped each other stand and walk and eventually run toward the future. Their story was not about perfect love or easy romance. It was about resilience and courage, about the willingness to trust again after betrayal, to hope again after despair. It was about two people who chose each other every day, through good times and bad, through sickness and health, through all the years that had brought them to this moment. As the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, William and Diana York sat together on their porch, holding hands and remembering everything they had built together. They had rebuilt their hearts slowly, carefully, piece by piece, until those repaired hearts beat in perfect synchronization. They had created a love that would outlast them, reflected in the faces of their descendants and the continuing prosperity of the ranch they had built together. They had found each other in the darkest moment of their lives, and together they had built something that blazed with light. And that, they both knew, was the greatest victory of all.